The wind howled across the vast Wyoming plains like a mournful spirit, carrying with it the chill of impending winter and the faint scent of sagebrush. Clara Montgomery clutched her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders, her bare feet taking from the jagged rocks and thorny underbrush that seemed to claw at her with every step. It had been hours since she'd slipped away from the ramshackle cabin she once called home, a place that had become a prison of fear and regret. Her husband, Harlan, was a man whose temper flared like dry tinder in a lightning storm, his fists leaving bruises that matched the purple hues of the twilight sky now fading behind her. She had endured it for 3 long years, ever since her father had arranged the marriage to settle a debt, binding her to a life of isolation and pain. But tonight, something inside her had snapped like a brittle branch under too much snow. She had waited until Harlan passed out from his whiskey-fueled rage, grabbed nothing but the clothes on her back, and ran into the night, her heart pounding with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. The moon hung low, a sliver of silver casting airy shadows on the rolling hills. Clara's breath came in ragged gasps, her lungs burning from the cold air. She had no plan, no destination, just the desperate need to put as much distance as possible between herself and the man who had vowed to love her but instead treated her like property. Memories flashed through her mind, the first time he'd struck her, over a burned supper, the way he'd locked her in the root cellar for days as punishment, the nights she'd cry herself to sleep, dreaming of the freedom she'd known as a girl in the bustling town of Cheyenne. Her family was gone now, her parents dead from fever, her siblings scattered like leaves in the wind. She was alone in the world, or so it felt, with only the stars above as witnesses to her flight. As the hours dragged on, exhaustion began to weigh her down, her legs trembled, and she stumbled more than once, scraping her knees on the unforgiving ground. The landscape was unforgiving, a sea of grass and rock that stretched endlessly under the night sky. She paused for a moment, leaning against the lone cottonwood tree, its bark rough against her palm. Tears stung her eyes, but she wiped them away fiercely. Crying wouldn't help, it never had. She needed to keep moving, to find shelter before the cold claimed her. Rumors in town spoke of outlaws and wild animals roaming these parts, but right now, the greatest threat was the man she had left behind. Harlan would wake soon, discover her absence, and come hunting. He always did. In the distance, a faint flicker caught her eye, a campfire, dancing like a beacon in the darkness. Hope surged through her, mingled with caution. Who would be out here, so far from any trail? Trappers, ranchers, or worse, men like Harlan, seeking solitude for their own dark reasons? She weighed her options: continue into the unknown and risk freezing, or approach and risk whatever awaited. The cold decided for her. Her fingers were numb, her teeth chattering uncontrollably. Slowly, she crept forward, staying low in the grass, her eyes fixed on the glow. As she drew nearer, the scent of wood smoke and brewing coffee reached her nostrils, a comforting aroma that made her stomach growl. She hadn't eaten since noon, and the thought of warmth was intoxicating. Peering through the shadows, she saw a solitary figure silhouetted against the flames. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in weathered denim and a leather vest, a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his face. A horse grazed nearby, its saddlebags bulging with supplies. The man poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks skyward. He seemed at ease, unhurried, as if the wilderness was his natural domain. Clara's foot snapped a twig, and the sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet night. The man froze, his hand instinctively moving to the revolver at his hip. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice deep and resonant, carrying the drawl of the frontier. Panic seized her. She considered bolting, but her body betrayed her, too worried to run. Stepping into the light, she raised her hands slightly, showing she meant no harm. "Please, I don't want trouble, just warmth." The man studied her for a long moment, his eyes narrowing under the brim of his hat. They were gray, like storm clouds over the mountains, piercing yet not unkind. He took in her disheveled appearance, the worn dress, the bruises peeking from under her shawl, the fear etched on her face. Slowly, he relaxed his stance, though his hand lingered near his gun. "You look like you've been through hell, ma'am. Come on over. Fire's plenty big for two." Gratitude washed over her, but she approached warily, like a wild animal testing a trap. She settled on a log across from him, the heat from the flames seeping into her chilled bones. He said nothing at first, just watched her with quiet curiosity. Then, without a word, he reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a thick wool blanket, faded but clean. He stood and draped it over her shoulders, his movements gentle, as if handling something fragile. The gesture stunned her. It had been so long since anyone had shown her kindness without expectation. "Thank you," she whispered, pulling the blanket tight. "Name's Eli Hawthorne," he said, resuming his seat. "Cowboy by trade, drifter by choice." "You?" "Clara," she replied, omitting her last name. It felt tainted now, linked to Harlan's cruelty. Eli nodded, pouring hot coffee into a tin cup and handing it to her. The steam rose invitingly, and she sipped it gratefully, the bitter warmth spreading through her. "What brings a lady like you out here alone?" he asked, not prying, but the question hung in the air. She hesitated, staring into the fire. "How much to reveal?" "Running," she said finally. "From a bad marriage." He wasn't kind. Eli's jaw tightened, but he didn't press. "Seen my share of that. World's full of men who think strength means breaking things." He poked the fire again, his voice softening. "You're safe here for the night. No one's gonna bother you." They sat in companionable silence for a while, the crackle of the fire the only sound. Clara studied him covertly. He was handsome in a rugged way, a strong jaw, stubbled chin, lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun. His hands were calloused, marked by years of hard work, but there was a gentleness in how he handled the simple tasks, stirring the coals, checking on his horse. He wasn't much older than her, perhaps 30, with the bearing of someone who'd faced loss and kept going. As the night deepened, Eli shared stories to fill the quiet. He spoke of his life on the range, herding cattle across Montana and Wyoming, the thrill of stampedes and the peace of starlit camps. "Grew up on a ranch near Laramie," he said. "Pa taught me everything: roping, riding, surviving. Lost the place to drought a few years back. Been wandering since." Clara found herself opening up, bit by bit. She told him about her childhood in Cheyenne, the dances and laughter before her world darkened. "I dreamed of adventure," she admitted. "Books about far-off places. Never thought it'd end like this." Eli listened without judgment, his presence succumbed to her frayed nerves. When yawns overtook her, he unrolled a bedroll near the fire. "Sleep here. I'll keep watch," she protested weakly, but exhaustion won. Wrapped in the blanket, she drifted off to the sound of his soft humming, an old cowboy tune about lost loves and open trails. Dawn broke with the symphony of birdsong and the golden light spilling over the horizon. Clara woke to the smell of bacon frying, her body stiff but rested. Eli was already up, tending the fire, his horse saddled. "Morning," he greeted, handing her a plate. "Figured you'd be hungry." She ate ravenously, the simple meal tasting like heaven. "Why are you helping me?" she asked between bites. He shrugged, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Because it's the right thing, and maybe because I've been where you area running from shadows." As they packed up, Eli offered her a choice. "Town's a day's ride east. I can take you there, find you where Cork in. Or, if you're willing, come with me. Got a small outfit up north, near the Bighorns. Need a hand, and you seem like you could use a fresh start." Clara's heart raced. Trusting a stranger was risky, but something in Eli's eyes spoke of honesty. The alternative of facing the world alone, with Harlan possibly on her trail, terrified her more. "I'll go with you," she decided, her voice firm. They rode double on his horse, a sturdy bay named Rusty, the blanket still around her shoulders like a shield. The landscape unfolded before them, rolling prairies giving way to rugged hills, dotted with wildflowers and grazing antelope. Eli pointed out landmarks, a hidden spring, an eagle's nest, his knowledge of the land impressing her. Conversation flowed easily now, about dreams and regrets, the beauty of the West. By midday, they stopped at a creek to water the horse. Clara splashed her face, the cool water washing away some of the grime of her escape. Eli sat on a rock, whittling a piece of wood into a whistle. "For luck," he said, handing it to her. She blew a tentative note, laughing for the first time in months. It was a small thing, but it felt like reclaiming joy. As they continued, clouds gathered, threatening rain. Eli quickened the pace, but the storm hit fast, a downpour that soaked them to the skin. They took shelter under an overhang in a rocky outcrop, Huddling close, the blanket became their shared cover, and in that moment, Clara felt a spark of warmth not from the wall, but from his nearness. The rain passed, leaving the air fresh and the ground muddy. They pressed on, arriving at Eli's spread as dusk fell. It was Modesta log cabin, a corral with a few horses, a barn leaning slightly from wind. "Ain't much," he said apologetically, "but it's home." To Clara, it was paradise. Inside, a stone fireplace dominated the room, shelves lined with books and tools. Eli lit a fire, and they dried off, sharing a meal of stew from his stores. Over candlelight, stories poured out, her marriage's horrors, his lonely years after losing his family to illness. That night, as she lay in the guest room, the blanket folded at her feet, Clara realized this was more than escape. It was a beginning, handed to her by a cowboy with a kind heart. But shadows lingered. The next morning, a rider approached Harlan's brother, searching for her. Eli confronted him, revolver drawn. "She's free now. Tell him to stay away." The man left, but tension hung in the air. Clara feared reprisal, but Eli reassured her. "We'll face it together." Days turned to weeks. Clara learned ranch life at tending gardens, mending fences, riding alongside Eli. Their bond deepened, shared laughs over failed biscuits, quiet evenings by the fire reading aloud. One sunset, as they watched the sky blaze orange, Eli took her hand. "That blanket was just the start," he murmured. "I want to give you a life full of love." She leaned into him, tears of happiness falling. Fear had driven her away, but love had found her here, in the arms of a cowboy who saw her strength. Yet, Harlan wasn't done. Word came of him rallying men for rescue. Eli prepared defenses, teaching Clara to shoot. "You're not alone anymore." The confrontation came at dawn, a posse riding in, Harlan at the lead, face twisted in rage. "She's mine," he bellowed. Eli stood firm, rifle ready. "Not anymore." Gunfire erupted, chaos in the corral. Clara fired from the window, hitting Harlan's shoulder. He fell, cursing, as his men scattered. In the aftermath, Harlan fled, wounded and defeated. The sheriff, summoned by Eli's telegram, arrested him for assault based on Clara's testimony.